I'm
Welcome to
good. I'm
Ponchatoula
good.
Live, the show where we make it easy to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today we've got a great guest. I'm so excited to introduce you to my very old friend, Mark Verbois. Mark and I went to high school together. He's one of the preeminent community leaders here in Ponchatoula. Mark, I remember years ago there was a judge down in New Orleans who got the nickname that he was the everywhere judge. And it seemed like wherever you go, you would see this judge. I remember one time getting ready for my court hearing in Covington, which is way outside of his jurisdiction. I look up, sure enough, there's the everywhere judge. It wasn't even his court, but there he was. I bring that story up because I feel like this guy, Mark Verbois, is kind of an everywhere dad, an everywhere guy. It seems no matter where you look, Mark's in on the action. You know, this week they're passing a big vote in Hammond City Council. Sure enough, there's Mark thick of the action with all the details on it. Port Manchac, Tangipahoa School System, you name it. He seems to have the inside track, the connections with who's making the moves, and the information on what's being done. So with no further ado, I'm very excited to introduce you to my dear friend, Mark Verbois. Mark, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Parker. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for saying that. Why don't we begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
So I was actually born in New Orleans. Grew up there until I was 5 or 6 years old, and then we moved to the North Shore, and what I truly call my home. Moved to Ponchatoula, went through the Ponchatoula Public School Systems, and graduated the great Green Wave Ponchatoula High, and went on.
Wave,
yeah. Not that cool Tulane like some of those other graduates I know, but went to end up graduating from Southeastern.
Tulane's the other green wave, man. You know,
it's like the other white meat. It's the other green wave as far as Ponchatoula is concerned. So,
right.
Yeah, graduated, went through Ponchatoula High, went on to Southeastern, graduated from Southeastern, and like I said, really never left, man. Just I call it home. That's where it's at.
I meant everything I said in the intro, man. You're one of the best assets we have in our community. You know, so often when projects happen, I mean, obviously you have the people whose job it is to do the thing, right? The teachers that need to teach the class, the superintendent that needs to run the school system, the politicians that need to be school board members and make the votes and do what they do. But none of that would work without an active community there to support them and community leaders to keep people informed. You know, if someone can't make the school board meeting, somebody's got to be around to help folks who missed it, you know, figure out what happened and what they need to know, whether it's parents, PTA, or, you know, taxpayers, you name it. And you always seem to do that. Now, before we get into what you're up to these days, the prestigious school board committee that you're serving on that's analyzing what we can do to improve our schools and how we should fund it and all those issues, let's go back. You mentioned you moved here when you were 5, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it was 5 or 6.
5 or 6. Okay. Now I've got 2 little boys. I know your kids are similar in age, and my oldest is about to turn 5 here in a few months. And I wonder what Ponchatoula looked like through the eyes of a 5-year-old. What are your early memories of town? Because you're coming from a big city, all you ever know, New Orleans, you know, to kind of a very stark contrast, Mayberry that was Ponchatoula in the 1980s. Tell us about your early memories.
One of my first early memories of Ponchatoula, so I'd almost have to draw a schematic out, but my dad was married before. Had a great relationship with his ex-wife who passed away a few years back. But that side of the family, I technically call my sister, my brothers, and their family. We all decided, they called us all as a family to ride together in the Strawberry Festival Parade. And I'm from New Orleans. I'm used to Endymion and Bacchus and Zulu and Rex and those kind of parades.
Right.
And they called us up, and my brother-in-law's dad had an older truck. I don't remember if it was a Ford or not, but I remember it was one of those woodside panel trucks.
So you're expecting a big lane turn type floats, and you get here and it's the Ponchatoula Strawberry Festival.
Correct.
Wow.
I remember getting on the truck. I remember we had bags of stuffed animals and candy and that sort of stuff. And I remember going through downtown around the railroad tracks, and that's about all I remember. But I looking at it back now to see the crowds we have for Strawberry Fest, it probably was a quarter of what it is now. But back then, I mean, you were 5 years old, you thought you were a superstar riding down the middle of town, you know. So
I'd love to. I wish we could somehow contrast, you know, my experience there. Because if you're 5 at that Strawberry Festival parade, I'm 7 at the same parade. But to me, born, I believe it or not, folks don't know, I'm actually from Killian. That's where my Ponchatoula was the big city to me when I was little. We moved into town and thought it was hot stuff. So to me, I see this parade, and it's probably the biggest thing I know or have ever seen. And to you, it's small potatoes. You're just, disappointed to be riding in the back of a truck instead of a giant float. It
still was awesome. I mean, just to see the parade just as on that side, as an adult now, just to be on that side versus the spectator, it's a great experience. But that was probably my earliest experience in Ponchatoula.
Well, you have kids about, pushing that age now. Did you take them to parades? How do they like that kind of stuff? What are their thoughts?
We've only done the small stuff. We've only done the Hammonds and the Covingtons and that sort of parades. Some people know, but I've rode Endymion the last couple of years, and
I plan to ask you about that. Yeah.
One of the reasons I decided not to ride.
Wife at the ball. Yeah.
Correct. One of the reasons I decided not to ride is because I wanted to be able to experience that as a dad and take the kids and do the things that I saw when I was that age, and the magic that really comes from Mardi Gras. I mean, when you're on the riding side, it's. You're looking at the back of a plywood box is really what it is, and it's not that. You get the magic of feeling like you're giving the magic, sort of like the Santa effect. But when you get to see it through your kids' eyes, it's a whole different experience.
I bet with you and your crew, which are a lot of local guys here we know that grew up with, y'all were some of the first folks I thought about when Mardi Gras got canceled and they start talking about what the future of Mardi Gras would look like, because I've really enjoyed living vicariously through you guys, seeing the photos of the balls and all that. I hope you plan to come back once it's safe and the parade gets back into it.
I'd already decided not to ride this year, but I was on the tail end we got shut down mid-parade last year, so that was a weird, odd experience. But that was a bucket list item for me. And I grew up when I did live in New Orleans. We grew up in mid cities where my dad's from. We lived in the same house he grew up in as a kid, so I was always an Endymion guy, which is a mid city route. And to be able to ride in that was a lifelong dream. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's a great parade, man. It's just it's one of several just bucket list items for sure.
Correct. And we really got a Ponchatoula Hammond parade float out there. So for those that know, there is a Ponchatoula Hammond Tangi connection on one of those floats, and every year it changes numbers, but there's one out there. So when you're there and you can get some good stuff.
Well, speaking of that, I see I put a quote up here. Trish just jumped on. Trish, hey, we hope you're still watching. Thank you for tuning in.
How are you?
And we want to share with folks, if you have questions for Mark about Endymion, any of the stuff we talk about, post them in the comments below. We're here with Mark Verbois. We're going to be talking about school board. We're going to be talking about local issues and, of course, parades and childhood and fun stuff as we go. So if you comment below, we will do our very best to address your comments and answer them. And thank you again, Trish, for tuning in. It sure is excited to see you on here with us. Circling back to your childhood, Mark, we talked about first impressions. What, who were some of the people that you recall from early childhood, be it friends, teachers? I mean, you're the new kid in town, so you didn't jump over like my kids are about to do from Strawberry Castle Preschool, where every kid in town is kind of Berryland born. Well, who were your buddies from an early age?
Well, I mean, the great thing about Ponchatoula is, like I said, it's we've grown, but we're still a small town, and you're going to be lifelong friends with these people. I always laugh because one of the ways you connect as a kid is getting sports, and I was an okay player. I wasn't a superstar, but but my first coach as football was Gary Stanger, who's now clerk of courts. Oh, and so we went to visit his office and walk in, and he's laughing at me, and the crowd's like, how do you know Mark? Oh, he taught me in football, So that's one of my favorites is, those kind of friends. And
Gary's a great guy. He coached my brother Bree. He commented last week on the show. In fact, we had Logan Davis on here, and Gary mentioned that he worked with Logan's grandfather at South Central Bell, which was, 3 names ago, at least, for the phone company. So he's been a great clerk of court for us, and Ponchatoula City Councilman before that, but just a great guy always, right on the sports fields and elsewhere. That's cool. That's a cool connection. So you see him around the courthouse now when you go?
Yeah, well, I went for leadership Tangipahoa, which I'm sure we'll get into, but we got to visit his office and walked in, and I know his son and his daughter-in-law and the family just from, like I said, growing up here. But just when you get around and you start growing up and you start with sports, my best man at my wedding. I had my brother and I had Lance Trailer, and Lance and I played ball together as kids. And like I said, he's still on my side to this day. Is probably one of my closest friends ever. And that all started at baseball, at 8, 10, 12 years old, whatever it was. And
Lance is a super guy. He's so genuine. He's clearly a brilliant fellow, but he's really down to earth. And
just you can't beat a guy like that. Like I said, when they're born of the earth and those they'll stick with you through thick and thin. That's the ones you don't lose. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking down here at another comment from Trish. She says Ponchatoula is a straight up Hallmark movie. And I agree, and right now they're literally are Hallmark type movies that show us now and prove that this time of year.
That's correct.
But folks like Gary, folks like Lance are a big part of that. Well, tell us about, we mentioned childhood, growing up playing ball, like me. I mean, you were a better athlete than I was. And I remember that from the Key Club tournament.
I don't know about that.
In high school. But you also weren't Charlie Landry, right? Neither one of us were going to go on and earn scholarships and renown like some of our friends. So you get to high school, and although you were a few years behind me, I remember you were really a standout leader. We met, spent most of our time together through the Key Club. And I remember at a young age, you earned a lot of accolades there. You won offices. I think you may be the first guy from our town or from the school, at least during our generation, to be a district-wide officer. Tell us about your PHS experience. You don't have to focus on Key Club. I just bring that up because that was our common denominator. But what was high school like? What were you into? And kind of what did you learn while you were there?
Well, I was just thinking about something. I was driving in. I made me think about something. I hate to kind of back up just a little bit, but
please go wherever you like.
I don't consider myself a leader. It's just one of those things that I always just want to be involved. I get this from my mom. It's one of those giving hearts. It feels great to give back to people and to see that side. Sure. Well, my first experience when you say leaders, they tend to say you feel comfortable speaking and that sort of thing. And I'm a mass comm major, and I'm sure, like I said, we've joked about that.
Yeah.
But where it started,
I'm going to ask you about your career in broadcast journalism at Southeastern. You clearly excelled there.
The where that all started, when I was in junior high, I remember we had a tour, and you toured the campus and you learned new things. And I just wanted to be involved. And at that time, student council was the thing to do, to be involved and get involved. To run, you had to speak. You had to have a speech. And it was Tommy O'Neill was the council sponsor at the time, student council sponsor. And he was my teacher, a literature teacher. And they said you had to run. And so you had to get up at 12 years old in 7th grade, stand up in front of 200 kids and say, I want to run for office. So he said, you have to do it. It doesn't matter if you just say your name, but you have to get up there. So I said, I'm Mark Verbois. I'm running for secretary, whatever, parliamentarian, whatever it was. And I'm number 8 on the ballot, whatever it was. And that's what I did. Well, the next year, just from being involved, I was able to go and we had music going, and they recorded it. And it's a big running joke. And that's led to I've never felt comfortable speaking, but you feel more comfortable speaking. So I always tell the story is when I get to high school, I get to college, and I've spoken in front of 3,000 people in a room before, and it all started at Ponchatoula Junior High, where I was scared to say my name and me running for office. So, and it's
you make a great point. You may never get truly comfortable, but you're far less uncomfortable, and you're no longer terrified. You're no longer crippled in fear and paralyzed by that. Yeah, that's really neat.
All started where. That's what them pushing you to stand on the stage and do that made me feel like I wanted, things come up and I wanted to get involved, I was okay doing a little better at it. When I got to high school, I got to give credit was due. William Sims was a step ahead of me. So I got to give Mr. Ponchatoula, he was actually district secretary.
He's the best of our generation, man. That guy, he was Key Club International president. He spoke all over the world. But he's a true orator. I mean, William is skillful beyond anybody I know.
Absolutely.
In our age group, in our area, for sure.
But the student council of junior high, when we got to high school, you were president, and I remember you and Will Richardson running for office, and y'all were the guys that I looked up to as a 14-year-old in high school and coming in that made you want to do more. I just wanted to be involved. That's all. That was the deal. And they always say you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but surround yourself with the other people. My thing was just get next to these guys, and they're going somewhere. I'm just going to ride with them. Jump on the bus. If the bus is going, don't ask what the seat is. Just get on the bus. So
those were wild bus rides, if I recall, the Key Club.
I remember
yeah. While we're here
tournament.
talking about this, I'm sorry, Mark, please finish.
No, I was just saying, when you talk about the sports tournaments, us taking these car rides and going to district convention and some basketball tournaments in Bogalusa and all those things, those are great memories.
Yeah, they really were. We had such a blast. And I'm so grateful now, that now that we're in a different age range, right? And there's gray in my beard. You're not quite there yet, but it'll come one day. And
I got a little bit coming. I'm no Jeff Leicestershire, but
Oh yeah, the silver fox. We're gonna get to him in a little while. Off camera, Mark was picking on me about my quarter zip here. He has for years picked on Jeff and me and say that we wear this type of shirt or jacket more than anybody. So I noticed you sported yours there, Mark. I know that
in homage.
That's a good dig. And hey, speaking of Key Club days, how about this blast from the past? Captain Jeremy Pelche, Ponchatoula Fire Department. Another one of our fellow Key Club officers. I think Jeremy was our treasurer. Jeremy, forgive me if I'm wrong on that. You got your office wrong, but you did a heck of a job. And we had some great trips together, like you said, to conventions.
He's our fellow leadership Tangipahoa class president.
Oh, okay. I didn't make the cut as class president in my leadership Tangipahoa experience.
I believe Jeremy was, but
But Jeremy's a great guy. I see him. Obviously, everybody knows Jeremy all over town. He's not only one of the most prominent guys in the fire department, but he's just a really well-known community guy. But where he's a hero in my life is my kids go to Strawberry Castle Preschool, which means Jeremy is the guy that comes in a fire truck every year, and he lets them wear his helmet and he lets them hold the hose.
Absolutely,
they think he walked on water, so he's really cool. Oh, look at this. Jeremy, not only was he treasurer, he won the award for the best treasurer in the LAMIS 10. That's the Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee region. Hey, Jeremy, many props down on that. Thank you.
Fully deserves it.
Yeah, no doubt. He was, I do remember thinking about Jeremy. He always won the most service hours every year.
Correct.
Thanks to folks like Danny Williams, Harry Gabriel, all these strong leaders that were adults at the time. They really channeled our youthful enthusiasm into community service. And I think Jeremy would get like 1,000 or more hours in a year. Just incredible numbers.
When people in college said that, my parents didn't make me work at the time, but they did that because we were working 30 hours a week sometimes and plus volunteering. And Jeremy and those guys were the ones, like I said, y'all led the way for us that came behind. And Mr. Danny, Mr. Harry, those are the type of men that make you a man as you're coming up. It's one thing to hear your dad or your parents say, look somebody in the eye and shake their hand. And it's different to hear it. It's like, somebody could say, hey, you need to take this medicine because you're sick. But when you hear from the doctor, it's different. Same type of thing. Mr. Harry and Mr. Danny, those are the guys that teach you stand up when somebody comes in the room. I still laugh with Key Club, with me being around some of these political things, is how to make a motion in a meeting. It was drilled into us. You say, I move.
If you didn't know Robert's Rules of Order, you were out.
Yeah, that was right. But that's where you learn those things.
I'm glad you mentioned the kind of passing of the torch, the mentorship element from your peers that are a little older. Because for me, it was Trey Harris, Peronis Clark, Corey Berner. These are the three presidents that preceded me before I was president that year. And, for whatever good we were able to do, it was all on their shoulders and, with their guidance and example. And, the guys that came after us, like you, like William, Kevin Rayford, Jeff Leicestershire, David LaCroix, so on.
That's right.
And many more guys after that, down to my little brother, Louis, who we didn't go to high school at the same time, but eventually he would do it. We all learned from one another, and it was fun. It was kind of a lot like a frat in ways.
Correct. I always told people that I put a lot of weight on not necessarily what school the kid goes to and how successful. If you look at their friends, and that's a good indication. Like I said, you can go down that whole list. I mean, I went and did a trash pickup 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, and Peronis was there, pick it up, and he's a successful insurance agent. Trey, you can't beat what Trey does for the community and some of the fundraising efforts. And Brad, the rest of them, any on that list is all successful. To me, I'm not even touching, grasping what y'all are doing. And like I said, if you can,
that's not fair. You belong at the table, but you're right that, it's not coincidental that so many of those guys that were leaders through that organization are now leaders in the community, business owners, successful professionals. etc.
And what's great about Ponchatoula, if you realize, very few of them left Ponchatoula. They came back.
True.
And gave back. That's our home. So
yeah,
we sow that field and reap the benefits for later for our kids and those down the road.
You make a great point. Even guys that went away for a while, William Sims could do anything in the world. He's that talented, and he's been all around. He's lived and thrived in Manhattan, in Denver, in the biggest, best markets in America. But that call of Ponchatoula brought him back when it was time to raise children. He and his wife moved back here, and this is where they're choosing to do it. So that's right. That's a great
I guess
point.
we'll always be Tula boys. It's like it's bred. It's in you. We're not leaving you.
For sure. Well, let's talk about the next journey after Ponchatoula High. Okay, you go to Southeastern, where I know you did really well. If I recall, you were president of your fraternity. I know you were the anchor of the acclaimed station there in the broadcast journalism department. Tell us about how that was for you, and it helps you kind of further come out of your shell, and just tell us about the Southeastern experience, because I don't know that we've had a guest yet here really dig into all Southeastern has to offer its students and the rest of our community.
Correct. So the thing with me, I say it's a negative thing for me, and me wishing I would have done something different. Not negative by any means, but I always said I wish I would have left. But on the same token, if I didn't do what I did, I wouldn't have the connections and the love for this community that I have, that Southeastern helped install in me. So when I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually had a conversation with Mark Stricker. We call him Sprout here locally.
Sprout, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He said to me one day, he said, "Look, man," he said, "I'm gonna go." I said, "What are you going to get to do in college?" He said, "Man, they got Exxon and Shell down the road, and they have PR guys that hire these people in, and they take them all to Saints games." I said, "Man, that sounds fun." I said, "What do you got to do?" They don't have a PR degree. He said, "You got to be mass comms." I said, "Okay, on TV, radio, that sounds cool." So I did. I started out as mass comm. My mom's a longtime nurse. I decided I want to be a CRNA really kind of before that sort of took off. I switched to nursing and started working in the operating room, which is a whole nother story that I get to tell people. I used to hold hearts and scrub in on cases and all that kind of fun stuff. And I loved it. And I wanted to be a CRNA. Xavier University got rid of the CRNA program, and I did not want to leave the state at the time. So I went back to mass comm. Well, that's when Southeastern Channel was starting to pick off. Rick Satoon is the station manager, I guess is his title, because he's also a teacher and professor. And that's when Southeastern Channel was taking off. So some of the accolades that they have, I don't even know some of the awards and where they come from, because it happened really when we were there. We were the beginning stages of that. And they have since run Emmys and local. If you see anything come out that says college station, Southeastern Channel is winning it 9 times out of 10.
They're top in the South, as I understand it. And I think here within the last month or two, they just won a ton more awards.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
he was beside me, because I don't think that I was that great, especially back on now. Randy Reese, who is who is anchored in New Orleans, has been very successful. Anybody that you know that knows of her, the smile on her face makes the room. So when you're next to her, that's good to shine on that. It's like you're just trying to hang on as the boat goes by. So her and Crystal Booth and one of the guys that was in my wedding, Chris Collins, was another anchor. I met there at Southeastern. But that's also when football came back. So I was blessed enough. I did a marketing internship with Kelly Wells, who is now at the Florida Parish Arena. Also,
another Ponchatoula legend there. Yeah.
Correct. So I was able to do some great things with them. I was able to, with being part of the sports side, I was able to do some cool stuff and I love doing PA. Public announcing in the stadium is one of my favorite things to do. So I had some cool opportunities. I got to do a Southeastern LSU game at Wally Pontiff Classic at Zephyr Field. State high school tournament. All that came from my start at the Southeastern Channel and just being around, and got lucky enough to get the phone calls. Alan Waddell's took the spot that I had and ran with it. He's a WWL and does all kind of crazy stuff now. Coaches show.
He does an outstanding job. It's a great guy who does a wonderful job.
But that all came from Southeastern, and I started speaking to Mark Stricker and some of those guys, Ryan Leicestershire, Justin Franks, a slew of Ponchatoula guys. we're all in the same fraternity.
You're naming the Endymion crew basically there, that Ponchatoula
right.
earlier.
That's right.
But it's funny you mentioned Mark, AKA Sprout, because we don't even have 10 episodes in the bank yet on this show. And Mark hasn't lived here in at least 20 years, I think. But that's the second episode when Sprout's been talking about.
That's right.
And so if anybody's out there, give Sprout a shout and let him know that he's still alive and well in the spirit of Ponchatoula. Well, that's neat. Right. Well, so you're at Southeastern, you're thriving with the announcing, the broadcast journalism, that's all taken off. You're also living it up, and in a good, healthy college way. A bit like you were fraternity president. I know you've maintained a really close relationship with your fraternity brothers. That organization is important to you. Tell us about it.
So I'm a member of Theta Xi. I'm always going to be a member of Theta Xi. You hear people say, you've heard us say about fraternity. People say you were a whatever. I'm not. I am, and I always will be a Theta Xi. Some of my closest friends are either associated with Ponchatoula, Theta Xi, or that thread together. Again, it was the way for me to get involved, just like it was at Key Club. And again, did a bunch of different offices and ended up as president. And now I'm on the alumni board. It's just that ties everybody together. And like I said, those relationships that I've got from all those, we just did a thing with CASA. Rob Carlisle, who's the CEO of our local CASA Court Appointed Special Advocate.
Dear friend, awesome guy.
I got a call the other day, and somebody said, "Hey, I want to give some money." What's a good child service advocate for the area? And so I said, "Let me give Rob a call." And so that all came from Theta Xi. So those relationships I have, it's near and dear to me. Southeastern's near and dear to me as well as Ponchatoula is. And it all just, like I said, and it all, in full honesty, half of it came from riding coattails, and I see somebody ahead of me say, "Hey, that's a cool thing." I say, "Hey, I want to do that. Let's ride with that." So,
well, look, we've all got to learn from somebody, and we all have to follow somebody, right? So I think you're being unduly modest, but you make a good point. The person in front of you that you set your sights on as a role model, an example, is so important, because in all likelihood, most of us are going to follow somebody somewhere. And thank goodness you were heading in the right direction. So you get out of school. Tell us about the next step. What'd you do after you graduated? And, eventually we're going to get to this other stuff we've been alluding to: school board, leadership, Tangipahoa, wife, kids, the whole shebang. But what came after college?
So just kind of was looking for a job. You do the typical kind of job, look around. Like I said, the one thing that I think I was poor on was my planning ahead. And I've been lucky, knock on wood, that everything that I've done, it sort of fell in place, and without some of the planning that I probably should have done. But again, through a fraternity brother, got on with Enterprise. Not so much that he introduced me, but I knew he worked there, and so I was able to call and say, "Hey, tell me about the job." Enterprise, the same thing. I was very happy with what I did. I worked my way up. Was through that. I got to meet Peyton Manning's assistant, got to be friends with him, and work with celebrities' assistants, and meet some cool CEOs that guys walk. The cool thing about Enterprise, you don't know who's going to walk up. It could be Joe Blow, and they're in a T-shirt, and they own 85 dealerships on the West Coast. You just didn't know.
I'm told Enterprise has a great training program, a great management training program. What can you tell us about that?
So it's really kind of trial by fire on a lot of it. You go in, and a lot of it, people think it's just renting cars, but that's where I kind of got what little business savvy I got from Enterprise. And they teach you, how to take the revenues coming in, what's your costs, how to control them. That's where a lot of that training comes in, and they do those things. They'll bring you in. It seemed like there was training once a quarter. You were always going to something.
Yeah.
And again, some of those people that work there, when you get to a good corporation and good organization, the people that you become friends with, I talk to them probably a daily basis. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. But that led on to other stuff, and trying to think where through the steps of I got to work at the Deepwater Horizon project when it was here in Hammond.
Can I pause you one moment? I'd love to hear about that, but I just saw a comment pop up. Folks, we're here with Mark Verbois. We're talking about his life, his story, the Ponchatoula community, Southeastern. And this one kind of tickled me. Our friend Brittany here says, "Mark, all local celeb status." So and when I saw that, what made me giggle was it's true, man. This isn't even your first interview this week, I think, right? I mean, you've been on Action News 17 within the last few days. So, here at Ponchatoula.com, we're playing second fiddle. You've been doing a real news interview up the road. So, yeah, you kind of have achieved local celebrity status. So forgive the interruption. I just needed to share that.
No.
And, of course, tell us about Deepwater Horizon. I'd love to hear about that project.
No, I was just saying with Deepwater Horizon, it was great. It was kind of, again, it just sort of fell in my lap. And
you're talking about the response to that? Are you working in the claims, or what do you mean with regards to Deepwater?
Mainly what we did when I worked there was mainly just a document processing, and there was more to it, but you got to see, I worked in control, and you got to see the side of the people that needed the help. So it's sort of like when you take your kids to the food bank and see that there's people that, even though you came to the storm or you came to the Deepwater Horizon, didn't affect you, there was a lot that was affected. So it was cool to see that kind of side, and what came out of that disaster. That the one thing about Louisiana is that, we go through the hurricanes and the Deepwater Horizon disasters and everything else. I laughed at they had the electronic magnetic storm coming from the sun. Mm-hmm. Somebody jokingly said Louisiana's probably in the cone for it.
No, you're right. And the thing about this state, it's small enough that you always know somebody affected. Deepwater Horizons is tragedy on so many levels, economically, and but not that many people died. But one of my classmates from LSU, his little brother died, and his wife was pregnant at the time, and it was just as tragic a set of circumstances as you can imagine. But that's the thing about Louisiana; they may not be from this town, but it's like the Kevin Bacon game. There's not that many degrees of separation between those folks that just got whacked, in Lake Charles. They keep getting whacked in Lake Charles with hurricane after hurricane. It's a small, tight-knit community, even though it's a state of millions of people.
Yeah.
So you did that. You clearly got. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, like, it was cool to see that side, and I did that for a few years, and then as that kind of ramped down, I ended up, just like most of us in this area, I ended up working at a plant in Geismar, and I worked for a company called Rubicon. They're a chemical company. It's been around for decades, and I wasn't what we call an outside operator for those who aren't from the area. It's the guy that turned the wrench guys and the working in the unit, for lack of a better term. But I'm now I was called a production statistician. I work in the office, and we track our production and for the plant and raw good usage and that sort of thing. So kind of sitting behind a desk now, but that's the side. Like, we talk about Louisiana, that's one thing with us is we have a great industry when it comes to chemical and oil, and
absolutely,
there's so many of us that are involved with it, and it touches a lot of places. So, but I mean, I still say that, but I mean, we don't have those around here because of the nature. You have to be by the river, but I hope that Tangipahoa Parish becomes prosperous in business side. And that's why when we were talking about the Medline thing, that's why I was there. I was just interested and wanted to learn if there's new business coming to our area, because like I said, I want to see Tangipahoa Parish, Ponchatoula, Hammond, and from Kentwood all the way down to Manchac. I want to see us thrive. It's home. You take care of your home, you take care of your backyard. That's always been my end game. So it was, I had a funny conversation that when the last president or time before last parish president race, I didn't know Robbie that well, and I didn't know Carlos Notrano, who ran. Robbie Miller's our current
great guys, both good guys. Yeah,
both great. I didn't know him that well, so I sat down and gave him a phone call. Said, "Hey," I said, "What? Can we talk? Tell me what you got. What's your platform?" And both of them were the same. And that my same conversation then was, I have a great job, but when my kids come down the road and I have family and friends that are coming through, I don't necessarily want them to have to drive 45 minutes an hour down the road. I want us to have local opportunities here to stay locally. And that's the only negative side of my job, is that because I'm away from home, I don't get to do more that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I
can relate, and in my family, I'm one of 4 boys and one of 3 lawyers, but the other 2 attorneys had to leave this area to get the kind of success that they deserved.
Yeah.
And it's tough, so you're right. It would be great if we could take this area that's so strong in all the important ways, characters, and we have great families, we have great churches, we have great people. We have so much just incredible assets here in Tangi. But if we're being honest, we don't have the strongest economy. And that's probably a large part because we don't have the best schools. You know, you can look east and look west, and, you know, there are top 10 school districts on both sides, and we're not even close. And I know that's something that's been a focus of yours. How can we improve these schools?
Correct.
Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you understand that with great schools come great jobs. And then it's just a trickle down effect that all these other problems, you know, get better. It doesn't solve every problem in the book, but it solves a ton, you know, because then, for example, we have this big hospital, North Oaks, you know, and employs thousands of people and hundreds of doctors. But everybody knows most of the doctors live outside the parish. So these are some of our best earners, our best and brightest. They're the best educated, highest paid folks around, but they're spending their money down the street in St. Tammany or, you know, wherever they live. But very few are living in Ponchatoula and Hammond. So why don't we use that as an opportunity for you to tell us, you know, what you've mentioned your passion for this and kind of your why. So why don't you tell us kind of what this means for our community now and what you're doing to help with this problem and how others might join you?
Correct. So going back to the Key Club side, somebody like jokingly said a long time ago, you ought to go into politics when you get older. And that's never been a goal of mine. But I said, you know, I never did that. Well, like I said, it's not an in-game goal, but I never say no to opportunities sometime, and we'll explore it as they come up. But I've always said, though, if I ran for anything, it's going to be something on a local level that has tangible results that you can see and see schools made and see a result from it. It's one thing to be in Washington, D.C. and you pass a law and it's not as tangible as on a local level. So with that being said, I've always been, it's like you're saying, the one thing that touches all of things is education. So especially when my kids came, that priority rose. So one of the things of me wanting industry come to our area is that it, again, gives them opportunity, not to say it's a money game, but it does bring money into the parish, which supports police and education, all these other things. So I have it started with Leadership Tangipahoa, and I got to, it transitioned into learning more about it. But my current position, if you call it a position, is I got a phone call, and over the years of those that aren't from the area, we've had propositions come up, tax propositions to support our schools, and they got voted down. They were for property tax. By law, we have a 2% sales tax that goes to our schools, and it's capped. But they have, when the voters decided on that, one of the options the school board said was that let's try to go back as a sales tax. Well, to do that, they created this education, this taxing district, for, again, lack of a better term, that allows as a conduit to collect the sales tax and transfer it down. With that,
the school system educational facilities improvement district, is that the same one? Okay.
And you'll see,
and you were appointed to that district by the superintendent, Ms. Stilley. Is that correct?
Correct. So I got a phone call and asked if I would be interested in joining, and I did. That like I said, you'll see it as the EFID. Let me just preface this by saying the school board is the one that makes a decision. They haven't got to that process yet. So the decision yet hasn't been made, but because of the way that the roles fall, you have to get it on the ballot. You had to start the ball rolling so that they pull the trigger. We're already in that progression. So
is this like a blue ribbon panel? I mean, who else is on this? How do they appoint by district, or you know, how's this work?
Well, it's a nice
for most
diverse
of our
group.
listeners, it's going to be a new concept.
Correct. So most of our district, again, they're appointed, and we were voted and approved on by the school board. But it's a diverse group. You got myself. We spoke about Robbie Miller, parish president. Walter Daniels, who's the mayor of Amite. Trevon Cooper, who is a city council person for Kentwood. Teresa Damiano, who's a former school board member.
Right.
Correct. Dale Ferrer, who's one of the presidents of our local bank here, who's involved with everything.
He's still president of the port also? I know he was president of Port Manchac for a while.
He's president of Port Manchac. And then the last one is they recently added was Brett Duncan, who is a current school board member. So we were all voted on this week, approved, sworn in, and we are a separate district. But again, if the school board says we want to go down that route, sales tax route, the ball's rolling, we're in place. So it's exciting.
So how can people get information about this? What are kind of the questions, the issues that they should be asking about? Just, help folks figure out, connect the dots a little bit between what y'all are working on, how it impacts their life, kind of how they can reach out to y'all.
So at time of taping, again, it hasn't been voted on by the school board. So first, if you have any questions, reach out to any of us on the EFID board or through your local school board member. Because what we're trying to gather, or at least the school board is trying to gather at this point, like I said, is what route the voters want to do. They want to go the sales tax route, or do we want to do a local property millage? The very important things to remember this stuff is if we do anything, it's going to be spelled out on the rolls. This is what this dollar amount goes to. It's checked by state auditors and it's followed up on. The main point that they're currently looking at is teacher pay raises. Our teachers, from what I understand, hasn't had a pay raise in 10 some odd years. The school board has a $200 million budget. I said it in that interview the other day. $200 million budget. 90% of that goes to salaries and benefits. So it leaves very little money for this expansion of growth that we've had in our area to build on our schools, to maintain our schools, to fix our schools. So
and I would imagine if we let the teacher pay get too low, and maybe it already is, I don't know, you can tell me, but when you're next door to probably a top 5 school district in St. Tammany and a top 10 school district in Livingston, and they're better funded, that's like being the lowest paid football coach in SEC. Your love of your school can only take you so far. The better offer is better offer. So are we at risk of losing some of our best and brightest teachers if we can't stay competitive pay rise? What is that?
The thing to remember is it's not just teachers, this is staff included. But when we look at this issue, this crisis that we've had, is we are a linear year parish. So if somebody's midline on the parish, hypothetically, you could drive, say, 20 minutes either direction and get generally a better paying job. So you have to consider that, even though we don't like to compare ourselves, we don't want to raise the taxes to be these, but you got to be in the ballpark. So you got to be competitive.
It's a reality. Yeah,
that's the main thing. But you can only go so far, like you're saying.
You mentioned youth sports in Ponchatoula, and it reminds me of something that happened when I was a kid. And this is at an age when I could give no care about politics. But if you played baseball in Ponchatoula during the 1980s, you knew Mr. Carlise. He was the groundskeeper for the Ponchatoula Park System. I see you nodding. I'm sure you do. Yep. He was incredible at his job. He was also an umpire. He was beloved by all us kids. Yep. But he was incredible. He was the best baseball, football groundskeeper around. But you know what I remember? He went to work for Hammond. And my understanding, according to my parents, was Hammond was paying him a better, fairer wage. In Ponchatoula, a little small town that we were, small town tax base, I don't know if we could or could not keep up, but I know he had to make a decision for his family. He loved being in Ponchatoula. He loved the kids there. It was obvious to everyone. But I would imagine all the people you're talking about have a similar decision, when it comes to feeding their families and doing their job.
Well, one thing that's come ahead with this crisis since we've had the COVID issue is that our lack of bus drivers and to attract new bus drivers. Currently in Tangipahoa Parish, if you are a seasoned veteran employee of a bus driver, you can go to Livingston right now and start as a rookie first day and get paid more. So yes, everybody has to remember, school is not just teachers and not just administrators. If you don't have the school buses to get the kids to school, it doesn't function. If you don't
I have one of the best bus drivers in the parish coming on this show at the end of the month, Marshall Graves. He's from a family.
I know who you're talking about.
Marshall, everybody, his dad, Pastor Bruce Graves, he's got aunts, uncles, family members in every and they're great at it. They're awesome. The kids who ride their bus love them. Right. The parents know that they're safe and well cared for. But they've all got to
remember that those people have been doing it for the love, for what you're describing. And they deserve to get the benefits of a standard pay raise. So that's one of the things that we're considering.
Give us a feel for how we're funded, because we talked about earlier. It's easy to know the outcome of stats, right? It's kind of like we know where LSU ranked last year, we know where we are this year. It's easy to tell who the top 10 schools are. When you're not on the list, you're not on the list. But so much of that, just like recruiting feeds LSU football, and thank God we have such a rich base here of wonderful talent here in the state. But it's in school systems, it's so much about money, right? I mean, you can't run a school without the money, and that comes from taxes. So how does our funding stack up? And you don't have to tell us about the whole state, but at least our neighboring parishes, St. Tammany, Livingston, the folks around here, how do we stack up, and what are they doing? And what are your thoughts on whether we should be more like them or do it differently or what?
So a couple of things that a lot of people, and they're learning more about it, but we are the lowest per student funded district in the state, period. Okay. So there's a lot more impoverished areas, and we are the lowest funded per student. So
out of 64 parishes, we rank dead last. We're 64th. So even the super poor parishes like Northeast Louisiana. So I mean, you're telling me St. Helena's better funded per kid than Tangipahoa?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
So there's three basic main fundings of a school district. So you have state funds, what they call MFP funds. You have your local property tax funds, and then you have your sales tax. Generally, on the local level, you are funded by a property tax. On average, for the parish, just a simple form, we collect 4 mills. It's basic, okay? We usually pay 10 mills for mosquitoes. We pay like 10 mills for lighting. The drainage district, I think, is 5 or 10 mills, all more than education, okay? Livingston averages 35, 40 mills, and St. Tammany is 65. Sometimes in some areas I've heard of, which of 70 mills that they provide for their schools. We bat the state minimum 4 mills of funding. And we've also left money on the table that the state says, all you have to do is fund yourself a little bit, just a little bit, and we'll give you more money. And because we stayed at the state minimum.
Do you mean that's like a matching fund? Like, so if we put up a little more, they'll match it or put up more? Is that how that works?
I don't think it's a matching fund in sense, but I don't quote me on this because I don't remember exact numbers, but say a round number. I think it was like on average, we left like $500,000 on the table that we could have collected.
Wow.
And those all go to those raises and all these little small things that we need to do. And our thing is we need to listen to the voters. If the voters are saying the last 3 times that they don't want it on the property, which is your standard general way to do it, and they say it's a sales tax, we're at the point that we have to act. And it's Brett Duncan, one of our school board members on the EFID board, said we're at a crisis point, and that's the truth, that some of the stuff you have to get years in advance, and we're at the point we can't wait around anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's so important. Well, thank you for stepping up, because I know you're not getting paid to do this, and I know it's taken a lot of your time and energy and attention. And I want to thank you, and I also want to thank Brandy and your kids, because it's a family sacrifice. I think a lot of folks don't realize that about public service or community leadership. It's a family sacrifice. If you're at a board meeting one night, you're not, bouncing your kids on your knee that night. And I know you're doing it for them so that the schools that they go through will be better and more like what they deserve. You mentioned earlier. Go ahead.
So I was saying, this. I mean, I left Monday morning at like 6 o'clock to go to a function. Got up at 6, left at 7, and that night I went 2 or 3 different things. I had one doctor's appointment, was the only thing that was me personal. And then I got home, I think, at 8 o'clock that night, and my beautiful wife Brandy is taking care of the kids. There, I got 2 toddlers, so it's, what do they call it? Trying to wrangle cats. I mean,
I can relate. I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old myself. It is, it's definitely like herding cats.
It's not as simple as just watching the kids. So I'm very grateful for my wife and my beautiful.
We're both blessed in that we outkicked our coverage, and we have beautiful wives named Brandy. And why don't you tell our viewers about how you met your wife and how she came into your life and what she means to you? Just in case she's watching, you better get this right.
Well, she's with the kids, so there's no telling what they're doing at the moment. But
there's no way she turned it off at school board tax. Let's be real.
Correct.
For anyone else who might want to know about the Verbois family, tell us about your love story.
So we went back to Southeastern, and I was president of the fraternity and vice president, and I had to go into the Greek office quite often. And you get to know the Greek community. You know so many people, and you meet this person, they introduce you, and yada yada. She worked in the Greek office, so we got to know each other a little bit there, just from a work standpoint. And then life happened. You graduate. She's actually from Homa, and she went all over Colorado, Maine. Trying to think where else, Hawaii. She's been all over to go to school, and came back around the same time that I was single at the time and just kind of settling down, getting into work. and we met again through Facebook and just, kind of caught up, and we hung out in New Orleans one day, and that was history. She's been my better half. I mean, she's pretty quiet and conservative when it comes to stuff, and I like to be involved and a little more, in front of the camera, for lack of a better term. But she really is. She grounds me, and yeah, she grounds me, and like I said, I think we complement each other well in our attributes and our strengths. And the story we always tell, I don't know if you remember this, is we went and worked at Strawberry Festival. Speaking of Lance Traylor, his wife's named Brandy. My wife's named Brandy with a Y. Yours is with the I-E, and then his is with an I. All weekend they were Brandy cubed, the three of them working together. So
that was fun. Yeah, of course, that Strawberry Festival booth, that's where I met my Brandy. So it has special stuff. So I'll never forget your wedding, because I remember it was, you got married months before we did, I guess. And it was a scouting mission of sorts. Anybody who's ever gone through that process knows that your wife or your fiance at the time is, paying more attention to those weddings than ever, because she's planning her own. And I was really sick. I don't remember if I had the flu. Thank God there was no flu. I had the flu or something bad. I was convinced my wife was going to reasonably let us make an appearance, say hello and duck out there early. But no. She made me stay till the buzzer. And but it was a beautiful ceremony. Y'all make a great couple, and now you have two awesome kids. You mentioned earlier, one thing I don't want to skip over before we lose time, that all this community stuff, with the school board got started with Leadership Tangipahoa. We've talked about that on the edges a little bit throughout the, and it's a great program. I did it. You mentioned Jeremy Pelche did it. You guys are actually leaders of your groups each year. Tell us about that. What is Leadership Tangipahoa? And then tell us about your experience with it and how it's been so important to you.
So talking about being involved, I was on the LHSA Sweet 16 committee locally for Hammond, which is our state basketball tournament. We're the hosting committee. I was on it for, 10, 12 years, and that's where I learned about Leadership Tangipahoa. Wanted to do it, but the thing about Leadership Tangipahoa, it's a daily, monthly, we called it a field trip. And so with work and everything, I was never able to do it. Well, finally, when I got this new position at work, opportunity came arise, and I said, it's always something I've always wanted to do. Everybody I've known has done it, loved it. Again, I want to know about my hometown and where I'm from and how it ticks and everything that goes with it. So again, I applied, was able to be accepted. I had a wonderful class. And what Leadership Tangipahoa is, people hear leadership and they think they're walking you and teaching you how to interact with groups. And it's not so much that. What it really is, it's a crash course, college crash course of what Tangipahoa Parish is and what makes it run and what makes it great. You start out with usually in days, and they're have a little theme to them, and they'll do parish government, city government, and then they'll do hidden treasures, and it culminates at the state capitol at the governor's mansion and the state capitol, and get to meet our representatives from that side. But what they do is they take you through, and you meet Robbie Miller and all his crew, and Gary Stanga and Andy Mathau and all the rest, anybody that's involved with parish president. And then it goes through each little step. Like I said, we'll go through Ponchatoula and Hammond, all those. And then you'll have a couple very cool days where we got to do some fun stuff. We did the escape rooms. I was out towards Independence when we were there. Elmer's Candy in Ponchatoula, we got to tour that. And then you got some very cool ones. Around this time of Christmas, the one that they always do with social services. You get to learn about some CASA and, all those groups that you don't see all the time. Correct. And so it all finishes up again at the state capitol. And it's very cool to be able to see my grandfather died, we were talking off air. My grandfather was a Methodist preacher. He died when I was 1, so I didn't know him, but everybody that knows me, that knew him, said I'm a walking image of him. And and when he passed, my grandmother passed, went through all the stuff. I found 2 pieces of thing. He was I think they call it a state lieutenant or something that was kind of appointed by Fox McKithen. And then on my mantle is a saddlebag that he used to ride horses with Jimmy Davis and You Are My Sunshine. So he's got a saddlebag with state government seal on it. Says Jimmy Davis, You Are My Sunshine.
With all the governors and big timers.
I never knew that. And so when we got to go, our local governor's from Tangipahoa Parish, and so we got to have lunch at the governor's mansion, got to meet him in his office and meet John Bell. And then we got to go see our lieutenant governor, at the time, Steve Pugh, Nikki Muscarella and those guys were our state reps, and we got to hang with them, learn how our state ticks, and to be able to stand on those podiums and go through and do those things that I figured at some point my grandfather did, to walk in those same halls and the history that's there. It's very cool. Very, very cool.
No, you're right. It's very cool. And for anybody watching, I share Mark's, endorsement of Leadership Tangipahoa. It is a great organization. It is a crash course. It's a full day once a month, and you go dig in. And there's healthcare day, and you'll go from all the hospitals, from Hood to Lollykill to North Oaks and other clinics, and you learn about local healthcare. Is education.
Yeah, the great thing about it, you'll have, Melissa Stilley was our current superintendent of schools. She went through it years ago. You'll have CEOs of local businesses, and then you'll have, not to minimize them because everybody's important, but you may have somebody just the hard worker that does the day in and day out grit work. And every person from the top to the bottom and everybody in between that I've ever heard go through that grew up here and knew the ins and outs. Every one of them said, man, I didn't know this, or I didn't know that, and I didn't know that. That's where it all comes from. That's what sparked me again recently to do all this stuff. So,
well, before we close, I want to ask you a few questions. And what I'd like to do is turn back to where we started, whether this is the 5-year-old kid fresh off the boat from New Orleans, so to speak, or the high school kid about to, embark into the world of Southeastern. If you could go back and give some advice to your younger self, to young Mark, based on all the things you've learned along the way, different jobs, fatherhood, marriage, you name it, what would be some advice you'd give to your younger self?
There's always things that you want to change. And I always wish I would have planned better and had a game plan. But when you look back on it, if I did something different, I may not be in this position that I'm in now. I love where I'm at. I love my family. I love my friends, and I love where I live. So if I did something different, I wouldn't have done that. But my biggest thing is I wish I would have helped people more as I came through, and I wish I would have cherished more when I was in certain moments. So you got to the cliche, stop and smell the roses. So we have wonderful, wonderful things here, and people tend to look, the grass is greener on the other side. Right. Why don't we sell what we have at home? Don't worry about running off to the next great thing. We're here. This is our home. Take care of our farm here. At my Leadership Tangipahoa talk I gave, I said, quit worrying about what St. Tammany has going on and what Livingston and New Orleans and Baton Rouge and the newest and greatest. Worry about us. The group that we talked about earlier, every one of those guys came back here, and those girls, and that's what makes us great, is these people that are here. Sure. And we're the melting pot that we call Ponchatoula and Tangipahoa and those kind of groups. And that's why people want to move here and want to be a part of it. I talked about, I wanted to follow those guys ahead of me. I want to make that great, that people want to continue to do that. So that's the kind of thing I look back on and just wish I would have done. I wish I would have done more. And that's why I try to do more now. And again, just cherish what you got. We have a wonderful area here, and we have a beautiful city. We have a beautiful parish and a beautiful region. So take care of what we got here. Give back to those that have put in the time here. So you've, and I'll say this because you interview us. We need to interview you more, but you told
me
so
wants to hear from me, man. No way. Thank you, but nobody wants that.
It's those that give back when nobody else is looking. Take care of your friends. Take care of those in need, and everything will come out in the end. So I've been proud to call you a friend, and what you've done here for this and what it's done for our area. So that's the kind of stuff that we need to do more as a group. There's always going to be
Mark, that feeling's 100% mutual. I'm so glad that God placed you in my life to be my friend, and I'm very grateful for that. And your words, your advice, there's nothing better we can close on. So I'll wrap it up there. I do want to share this quote. Matt, Brenda Dewey say they're proud of you, Mark. We all are, all of your friends. We're very proud of the work you're doing. So to our viewers, Mark, first I want to thank you first and foremost for sharing your time with us. To anybody watching at home, thank you for tuning in to Ponchatoula Live. We'll be back here next week. We'll help you communicate and get to know another local person better. And Mark, once again, thanks for being on the show. I'm really grateful. Before we go, anything else you want to share? I'll let you close us out.
No, I just want to say, like I said, let's take care of Ponchatoula and take care of our area and what we have great here. Love what we have at home. Take care of us, and there's always going to be fault to find. Don't worry about the fault. Worry about what's prospering, and let's keep sowing the seed that's here. So
Yeah,
love
you
it.
got it. Well, thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Great.